I pulled up slow wheels crunching over gravel the way they used to when Nana waved from the porch. Back then, she always waited with a hand towel slung over one shoulder and a cup of tea in the other. Not because I was anyone important, just because I was hers. But this time, there was no towel, no tea, just a crooked plastic sign stabbed into the grass. For sale. Orange and bold with an arrow pointing to the window she once taped birdseed recipes to. It stood right in the middle of the rose patch Nana had spent 40 years pruning. She used to say, "These girls don't bloom for show, they bloom for staying." And now there was a sign telling them to leave. I sat there a while, engine off. The wind moved through the trees like breath remembering how to sound. Jason came out first. My brother. Shirt tucked, phone in hand, like a man preparing for handshakes he never earned. He saw me and smiled like we were old neighbors, not blood. "You made it," he said. "Didn't expect traffic to let you through so fast." I didn't answer. Just stepped out, walked past him, past the porch railings, still etched with the grooves of Nana's rocking chair, past the spot where her wind chimes used to hang before someone took them down. Inside, the air smelled wrong. Too lemony, like someone had tried to erase decades with cleaning spray. The curtains were new gray industrial, and the lace ones Nana hemmed by hand were gone. "We're just getting things in order," Jason said behind me, already typing again. "You know how these things move fast once probate clears." I looked at the floor where her slippers used to sit side by side like a memory no one dared disturb. Was there a will, I asked? Jason paused. "It got messy." He said it like someone talking about rain delays. Mom found some old draft but nothing signed, and without that, well, the deeds and joint names. You know how she was never liked formalities. But that wasn't true. Nana kept every receipt in labeled folders. She wrote cards for birthdays no one else remembered. She kept her Bible wrapped in linen and her list of emergency contacts in 3 copies, one in the drawer, one in the freezer, and one in her coat pocket. She liked order. And she told me 2 years ago, "Elin, if anything happens, the room in back is yours. Not for money, for memory. That room. The one with the skein baskets and the window facing the west light." I walked toward it, heart thick. But the door was open now, the shelves bare. The yarn was gone. In its place stood a rolled yoga mat and a stack of fitness magazines. Jason's wife appeared in the hallway, sipping a green drink. "Oh, you're here," she said cheerfully. "This room gets such great morning light, I just love it." And I realized right there the house wasn't just being sold, it was already being forgotten. We had dinner that night at the round oak table Nana never let anyone put hot dishes on without a trivet. There were no trivets now, just silicone mats and store-bought pie in a glass dish too clean to belong in this kitchen. Mom sat where Nana used to like the throne had passed without question. Her blouse was starched, her lipstick too red. Jason talked about roof estimates and staging photos. His wife, Mandy, nodded along and offered to make the place more neutral. No one asked what I thought. I waited until the clatter of forks slowed. Then I said it plain and quiet. Nana told me the room in back was mine. The air paused for just a second. Then Mom reached for her water glass. "She said a lot of things near the end," she replied. "You know how confused she got." I looked at her. Nana was sharp until the last week. Even then, she knew the full name of my 3rd grade teacher and which drawer she kept the strawberry jam in the old kind with seeds. Confused wasn't the word. "She was clear with me," I said. "She said she'd written it down." Jason sighed, pushed his plate away like my words had spoiled the taste. "We looked," he said. "All we found was an old notebook with half a grocery list. No signatures. Nothing legal." Mom added, "And even if she meant to, she never finalized it. The house passed to me automatically joint tenancy. There's really no need to dig through memories just to fight over real estate. I wasn't fighting. I wasn't even raising my voice. But the room acted like I had flipped the table." Mandy folded her napkin carefully. "I get it," she said gently. "You're attached. But maybe try not to take it all so personally. Personally." They were painting over the walls where Nana wrote our heights in pencil. They boxed up her thread collection like it was clutter. They were erasing her and asking me to be polite about it. "It's not about the house," I said finally. "It's about what she trusted me with." Mom's mouth tightened. She looked down at her plate and said without looking up, "Sometimes people say things to comfort themselves. That doesn't mean we have to rearrange the law for it." Jason stood up. "This is getting emotional. We've got real logistics to handle. Closing paperwork buyers coming Monday." I sat still. My palms rested flat on my lap. Mandy smiled again, softer this time. "I know it's hard, Elin, but maybe try to think of it as making space. Letting go of the past. That's what healing looks like." But I wasn't the one bulldozing rooms. I spent the night in the guest room, if you could call it that. The twin bed creaked and the lamp still had a Christmas bulb in it. At some point, I got up and walked barefoot down the hall. I stopped at the door to the yarn room. Not my room. Not anymore. The moonlight caught something on the shelf, a forgotten coaster embroidered with the letter E. My name. My stitch. She made it when I was 12 after I won a spelling bee and cried because no one came. I held the coaster like it was a relic. And then I sat down on the floor right there in that gutted room and cried the kind of tears that come not from loss, but from being told again and again that nothing you remember matters. The next morning I woke early, not from rest, but from the kind of sleep that hovers. The kind where your body's still but your mind is pacing the hallway just outside your ribs. The house was quiet, too quiet, not the kind of silence that holds comfort. The kind that feels like someone packed all the breath out of it. I slipped out while the others were still asleep. Mandy's neon yoga mat was curled beside the couch like it belonged there. Jason's laptop hummed in the corner, left open to a spreadsheet of market comparables. But I didn't care about square footage. I walked to the back of the house, not to the room that used to be mine, but beyond it. Past the kitchen where Nana used to hum along to Patsy Cline. Out the old screen door that creaked like it still remembered how to complain. The shed stood at the far edge of the yard, near the back fence line. A squat, lopsided structure with peeling blue paint and one shutter missing. Most folks thought she used it for old rakes and paint cans, but I knew better. That's where she kept her quiet and her real things. The lock was rusted, but the trick was to lift it up, not twist. She taught me that. Inside, it smelled like cedar and mothballs. Dust floated in a beam of light cutting through the cracked slats. Everything was as I remembered, only smaller somehow. Or maybe I was bigger now. I moved to the back corner where the old sewing cabinet sat under a moth-eaten quilt. The cabinet had a false drawer. We found it once when I was 14. She told me, "Some things don't belong in filing cabinets. They belong in stories." I slid my fingers along the bottom edge, and there it was, the latch. The drawer popped open with a soft groan, like it hadn't been called upon in years. Inside was a small wooden box, smooth, hand-carved, with a single 5-petal flower etched on top. A dogwood bloom. She used to say dogwoods were for remembering. No key. Just a leather strap holding it closed. I sat on the edge of the cabinet and opened it slowly. Inside, a folded letter tied in twine. A USB drive tucked inside a button tin, and a small hand-drawn map on the back of a knitting pattern. The letter was addressed in her handwriting to Elin. "If they tell you there's nothing left, start here." I held it to my chest for a minute, unsure whether I was about to cry or pray. The only thing I knew for sure was this. Nana didn't trust the house to hold me, so she hid the truth in the only place no one else would look, where love had always been quiet, tucked away, and waiting. The map was simple, just a rough sketch drawn in blue pen on the back of a 1990s knitting guide. It showed the house, the garden beds, the edge of the lot, and beyond that, something labeled only as West Parcels Surveyed 16. I stared at it, tracing my finger along the faint ink lines like I was reading Braille from memory. The back fence. I hadn't thought about it in years. Nana always kept that gate locked, said the slope beyond was too steep, too wild. But now I wondered if she meant too sacred. I followed the map. The grass along the side yard was overgrown. My jeans caught on a dry thistle, the kind she used to pluck before I even noticed. Past the compost bin and the bent rain barrel, I found the narrow gate half buried in vines, its latch tied shut with a shoelace. I hesitated, then pulled. It opened with a wheeze that felt like a held breath finally released. Beyond the gate, the yard didn't feel like yard anymore. The grass was higher, the soil more stubborn. and yet somehow it felt more like her than any other part of the house. There was a stone bench near the tree line, still there, still steady, still stained with the faint outline of her teacup. I sat, took the letter from the box and unfolded it with careful fingers. Elin, if you're reading this, then the front part of the house is no longer ours. They'll say I never signed. They'll say it passed by default. But this... She must have pressed her pen hard because the ink had bled through the page. This land does not belong to them. I filed the parcel transfer in 2016. Ramesh helped me. It's in your name. It's yours. Not to fight over. To protect. I read it again and again. Then I looked out across the land. It wasn't much, maybe a third of an acre, but it held more than the rest of the property combined. The tree she planted when I was born stood near the slope, still leaning, still growing. She always said it never bent the same after the storm in '99. Neither did I. That night I drove into town. The law office was on Main, tucked between the diner and the used bookshop. The sign on the door still read, Ramesh Patel Esq. I didn't have an appointment. But when he saw the envelope in my hand, his face softened. Rosie's granddaughter, he said quietly. Come in. We sat in his office surrounded by dusty files and framed diplomas. I showed him the letter, the map, the parcel number. He pulled a thin manila folder from his cabinet, flipped it open, and turned it toward me. My name, filed, notarized, and dated 7 years ago. He looked at me and said like it was fact, that piece of land isn't part of the joint estate. It's yours. Legally. Without question. And for the first time since I came home, I exhaled without apology. The house looked different when I returned. Maybe it was the late afternoon light slanting across the porch. Or maybe it was just me seeing it not as a home anymore, but as a stage someone else was rehearsing on. Jason's truck was in the driveway, the back loaded with paint cans, a ladder, and 2 folding chairs. Staging furniture, probably. They were getting ready. For showings. For offers. For finality. I walked inside. Mandy was lighting a candle, lavender vanilla sharp and synthetic. She jumped a little when she saw me. Oh, Elin, I didn't hear you come in. I didn't reply. Just looked past her to the back hallway. The one that led to the yarn room. My room. The door was open. The walls had been painted a pale beige oatmeal maybe, or some other word meant to sound clean. The shelving was gone. The window now held sheer gray curtains, and a small potted succulent sat on the sill where the tin of buttons used to be. Mandy followed my gaze. It just felt better to simplify, she said. Less clutter. You know, I stepped into the room. It smelled like a hotel lobby. I stood in the center and turned once slowly. Then I walked out. Jason was on the phone in the dining room but hung up when I entered. What's going on? He asked. I need to talk to Mom, I said. She's not home, he said, frowning. What is this about? I opened my bag, pulled out the letter, the parcel file, the map. This, I said. The backlot. It was Nana's, and it's mine now. Jason flipped through the papers, eyebrows knitting. Where did you get these? From her, I said simply. She filed the transfer in 2016, with Ramesh. It's legal. Final. This portion of the property is not part of the joint estate. He scoffed, but I saw the shift in his posture, the tightening around the jaw. You're digging through boxes and dragging up things she never told the rest of us, he said. She did tell me, I replied. You just weren't listening. He pushed the file back toward me. Look, Elin, this isn't helpful. We're trying to make this process clean. You showing up with old letters and half-drawn maps doesn't change how probate works. I took a breath. Slow, even. Actually, it does, I said. I met with Ramesh. He confirmed it. This land is mine. The shed, the bench, the slope. You don't get to list it or paint it or bulldoze it for parking. Jason laughed too sharp to be natural. You think this little patch of dirt matters? You're going to split the property over a garden bench? It's not just dirt, I said. It's the part she didn't trust you with. The silence that followed was long enough for me to hear the refrigerator hum. Then Mandy stepped in holding her phone. Did you post something? She asked Jason. Because your realtor just called and said the listing might be flagged. Jason shot me a glare. What did you do? I told the truth, I said. That's all. An hour later, Mom came home. She walked in carrying grocery bags and saw the papers on the table. She didn't ask. She just set the bags down and said I told her not to complicate things. I looked up. Did you know I asked? About the back parcel. She didn't flinch. She mentioned it, once. But I didn't think she'd follow through. She did. She always was sentimental, Mom said flatly. Too soft. Too trusting. She trusted me, I said. Mom sat down, rubbed her temples. You always took things too personally, Elin. No, I said. You just never believed anything was personal unless it happened to you. Neither of us spoke after that. I gathered my papers, slipped them back into the envelope, and left the room. But this time, I didn't walk quietly. I let the floorboards creak. The next morning, I dressed quietly. The sky was gray, the kind of overcast that makes every sound feel louder than it should. I slipped the flash drive from the tin where Nana had hidden it, a button tin with a faded red cardinal on the lid. Funny how she always hid what mattered inside things no one else would value. By 9:00, I was back in the house. Jason and Mom were already in the dining room. The realtor was scheduled to arrive at 10. Papers were laid out. Coffee brewed. Mandy sat with a legal pad in her lap, pretending to be helpful. I took the old laptop from the shelf in the den, the one Nana never let anyone throw out even when the keys started sticking. I plugged in the drive. Do you have a moment? I asked. Calm, even. Jason looked up wary. I want to show you something, I said. They didn't say no. The screen lit up, and then there she was. Nana, sitting in the yarn room. Light slanting behind her through the west window. She wore her blue cardigan, the one with the wooden buttons shaped like leaves. She looked tired, but clear. Her voice, when it came, filled the room more than any of ours ever had. If you're watching this, she said, then I've probably gone and there's some sort of mess about the house. Jason shifted in his seat. Mom folded her arms. I didn't want to make things difficult, Nana continued. But I knew deep down that the main house would be fought over. So I made a decision. The back lot, the slope and shed, those are Elin's. I signed the paperwork. I filed it. Because she's the only one who understood what that space meant. She looked straight at the camera. Jason, you always wanted numbers, square footage, appraisals. But this isn't that. This is where I kept my quiet. My old bones. My love. Her eyes softened. And Elin, don't let them tell you this isn't real. Just because something isn't loud doesn't mean it's not true. The video ended. Silence followed. Not a tense silence, a still one. Jason rubbed the bridge of his nose like he had a headache that had just turned personal. She recorded that when he asked. Does it matter? I replied. Mom didn't speak. Her hands clenched in her lap. Not from shock, but from something more bitter. Like she'd lost a game she didn't know someone else was playing. I took a breath. There's more, I said. I've already submitted the parcel paperwork to a title attorney. The backlot is being flagged separately. You can't list it, you can't touch it, you can't sell it. Jason pushed back from the table hard enough for the chair to scrape. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Over a shed and a dirt patch. I didn't reply. Because I wasn't arguing. I wasn't negotiating. I was keeping a promise. The realtor showed up 5 minutes later. Jason met him at the door. I stayed in the back hallway watching from a distance. I heard Jason say, There's been a change. We'll need to adjust the listing. His voice was flat. Not angry, just resigned. Like someone finally realizing the numbers don't add up when you forget to carry the human cost. Mom never came back to the dining room. Mandy asked me later. Why fight this hard for something so small? I looked at her, not cruel, not smug. Just honest. Because it's the only piece they didn't lie about. And that night, I walked out to the slope, sat on the stone bench, and let the silence settle around me, like a shawl woven by hands I still remembered. It took a few weeks for everything to settle, or at least quiet down. Jason moved forward with the sale of the main house. I didn't stop him. I didn't need to. The parcel Nana left me the back slope. The bench, the shed was never part of what they cared about. It held no market value. No flipped square footage, no commissions to chase, but it held her. I filed for a small repair grant from the historical district. I repainted the shutters on the shed, restored the quilting hooks to the walls, oiled the hinges on the old cabinet. I brought in a small space heater and a shelf of paperbacks the kind Nana used to keep in her bedroom, spines cracked and loved. I didn't move in. I didn't need to, but I came back. Some Saturdays I'd sit on the bench with tea in a cracked mug and let the light shift across the grass just like it used to on Nana's hands while she worked. The yarn room was gone, the house repainted, the pencil marks on the kitchen door erased, but here, in the smallest part, they overlooked something still held. And every time the wind moved through the trees, I heard her again, not in words, but in stillness. What they sold was square footage. What she gave me was a place to stay whole.